Hey Home Slices, this episode is actually part 2 of a 2-part episode where I review Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with my guest Curtricia. If you haven't listened to part 1, stop this podcast now and go listen to part 1. Okay, alright, well, we're about to pick up where we left off, so don't say I didn't warn you. So the next episode we're going to discuss is the absolute, hands down, best and most memorable episode in the show, in my opinion. We're reviewing season 4, episode 24, entitled Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse. In this episode, we get a powerful performance from Will and James Avery, and we get to explore what Will's character is like in a vulnerable light, one where he can't deflect his feelings with the silly jokes and the humor, and he has to face being abandoned by his absent father yet again. So now we're in season 4. It's 4 years after Will has come to live with his family in Bel-Air, and he's in college now. He's at ULA, which is a fictional university, and he sees a creepy man with a skull cap watching him. It's very uncomfortable. It's very creepy to me.
Right. He looked so creepy. That's literally like my first note. I put watching him all creepy at his job. First of all, he's looking at Will like he's a snack. That was the first one. Like, what on earth are you doing?
Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It was making me uncomfortable.
Right.
So Will is
what?
doing his work study job, which is cleaning up at what appears to be like the campus bookstore or the campus
Peacock.
union.
Was that the Peacock? I don't remember.
It was the Peacock. Yeah. Yeah, working at the Peacock, doing his work study job. And Will is like, he must be a cop. Like, I must have messed up or whatever. But
Carlton's like, turn yourself in. It's the only way.
yes. But eventually the guy speaks to Will, and Will gets it together and realizes that it is his dad. The way he was staring at him is still creepy, but at least he knows him, right? And Carlton ends up butting in, and he's like, oh, like, this is Uncle, what is his dad's name? Uncle Lou. There we go. Carlton butts in and he's like, hey, Uncle Lou, how you doing? It's been 14 years. Let me tell you how life has been. Basically, like, right. Carlton is bringing a lot of levity to this situation. But Will, you can tell, has a problem with his father re-entering his life and basically having to have a conversation with somebody that he does not know or that he feels abandoned him. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look up the actor who played Lou.
And Chastity told me that he was the one who was a bad dad in the Medea movie, the Tyler Perry movie.
Wait, who?
She said that I think he was the dad who walked out on his son in Medea's. Oh,
no,
that's not
him. He does
Angela
look like
Bassett.
him, but that's not him.
Oh, yeah, right. That is, you're right. That's not him. I got to tell her because I was like, I just got the man's face in my head. That's not him. Right.
I could see where they do look alike, but
me too.
His face is a different shape. Yeah.
Right. She was like, he always playing somebody deadbeat daddy.
That would have been great if he did, but he may have passed now. I'm not sure. He would have been too old by then. So we see that Will's father, played by Ben Vereen, talks to him. It's been 14 years since Will has seen him. He's a trucker now. We all know truckers make a decent living. And you can tell Will is uncomfortable. And their conversation is coming across as very transactional. It's almost like he's talking to an old friend from high school that he lost touch with and not his father. It's very awkward. And so Will, for whatever reason, is like, how about you come over for dinner tonight? And Lou is like, I don't think Phil and Vivian will be on board for that. He's like, no, it'll be fine. But there's, of course, a piece of Will who wants to get to know his father.
Of course.
Sometimes your parents mess up and they mess up in a big way, but there's always something inside that's like, I still want to have a relationship with this person. So Lou walks away, and I know that Carlton is supposed to be like the opposite or the answer to Will, but I think Carlton's role is also to bring things to Will's attention. And Carlton has like a very tender response to how Will is reacting to his father. And he's like, oh, you must have a lot of feelings about this. And Will, because he's Will, just kind of brushes it off or whatever. Especially when Carlton is like, let me hold you.
Yeah. I think it was this episode that like made me realize that Carlton actually lived in the hood until he was 6. I didn't realize that until he was like, oh, I remember that we moved from the hood when I was 6. And I was like, wait, they lived in the hood? I forgot about that.
Yeah, they did. So by this time in the show, we have the new Aunt Viv, and she sees Lou at her house, and she is shocked. And we find out that Jeffrey purposely didn't tell Aunt Viv that he was coming because he thought absolutely, yes, he thought it would be way funnier if he was an suspected guest or uninvited guest.
So we have to back up to actually pointing out that Will's mom, she knew that Lou was coming. Did you catch that in the beginning?
No.
So he was like, your mom didn't tell you. He said that he had talked to Will's mom 3 months prior. It was 3 months prior to him visiting, but I could only imagine that conversation with her not enlightening, because she probably was like, you ain't been around. Like, I highly doubt, that you even gonna come. But she knew, but he, Will wasn't privy to it. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I did not catch that. Yes. So we see that Hillary comes into the picture, and Hillary is like almost flirting and is like charmed by Lou. And he's like, oh, this is, such a beautiful lady. And she's like, well, who are you? And he introduces himself as Uncle Lou. And she's like, nah, like, stop playing.
No, cut it out.
No, Will's dad is a deadbeat.
Right.
Yes. Will's dad is
his mom flat.
Right. Yes. He left years ago. And this is the part where I'm telling you, like, I feel like she has a personality disorder, because I feel like a normal person would not say that.
Is that and her saying, well, why'd you run out of him then? Who knows when we'll ever see you again?
Yes. Yes, she just has this unabashed truth telling, and it's just very funny to me. And so we see Uncle Phil gets home, and he is pissed right away. And Lou, of course, feels that, and he's about to leave. And then that's when Hillary chimes in, like, who knows when we'll see you again?
Right.
And Hillary, to me, is like the real MVP, because she's saying what everybody else is too nice to say. Like, everyone's thinking it, but she actually says it, right? So Uncle Phil is trying to be nice, and I think Aunt Viv takes him aside and is like, you need to get your stuff together, and this is Will's dad. But Uncle Phil cannot help himself. He's just not messing with Lou. So in the next scene, we see Will and Lou go to the fair, and we see a young Miles from Moesha at the fair laughing with a father figure. I think he's sitting on his shoulders, and Lou starts explaining why he wasn't there for Will. And he's saying that he wasn't ready, and he felt trapped, and he panicked and ran. And hearing him say this stuff, I'm like, this man has been rehearsing this speech for years.
Right. But the crazy part about it is that Will didn't even want to hear the explanation at first. Right. And that's how you know that he just wanted his dad present. But Lou felt like he had to give an explanation, which was BS.
Right, right. And the explanation never serves the child. It always serves the person who's explaining.
Exactly.
Right. And Lou, of course, claims that he's different now, right? He wants to be a part of his life. And for the first time during this scene, he calls Lou his dad after his dad starts,
so proud.
Starts throwing up baskets, like, because now they have.
That's how they can relate.
Right. They have
a common interest.
Right. Basketball in common. And he feels proud of his dad, and he's able to actually call him that. And so we see that Vi is on the phone with her sister. And of course, she is worried. But Will has decided that he wants to spend his summer on the road with his dad. Again, his dad's a trucker. So they're going to go all across America together. Uncle Phil is not having it. Uncle Phil says, the hell with your father. Uncle Phil is reminding him that he's been absent. He hasn't even called in 14 years. And Uncle Phil knows that his father is only being a part of Will's life to soothe his guilt and not because he really wants to be a part of Will's life now.
Yeah, he can see right through Lou, you know.
Absolutely. And Uncle Phil says, you're a fool if you can't see that. You're a fool if you cannot see that your father is here for himself and not for you. Then Will says the meanest thing. It's so mean. And he says it out of anger and out of, you know, being youthful and naive. But he says to Uncle Phil, who cares what you think? You're not my father. And Uncle Phil looks so hurt.
And he was hurt, you know, he was hurt. But I feel like, you know, I could understand Will's frustration because he already has one foot out the door in Lou's truck, right? Yeah. And he is wanting the support of who he's living with. And Uncle Phil's anger gets the best of him. So Uncle Phil's anger, and even though Uncle Phil has a right, because he already knows what's going to happen in the end, he's doing it to protect Will. But how he's doing it is making Will pissed because he's like, man, I'm trying to go. Like, I want to be with my dad. He's finally here. Like, this is my shot. And you're just down my throat. And so Will just jumps out like, you're not my dad. Like, let me go.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, so in this next scene, it's the next day, and Jeffrey chats with Uncle Phil, and he recites a weird poem. And here's what the poem says. The master lives a life of ease, while we live life upon our knees. Waste not your tears, and save your breath, for soon he'll die a violent death.
Are you talking about Lou?
So... He's basically saying this is a poem that my mother used to say to me that would always make me feel better. And it's very rude because it talks about his master, who in this instance is Uncle Phil, dying a violent death. But I feel like it's actually a double entendre because if you think of the poem as the master being Lou, Will's dad, and the part about him dying a violent death, basically what he's saying to Uncle Phil, or what I took from it is, don't waste your tears and save your breath, because eventually Will is going to see his father for who he really is. Right? So like, don't worry. Don't fret over this. Will is going to see what you see eventually. So that's what I got from it, even if he was only saying it to be mean to Uncle Phil.
Yeah, it's still hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Yes, it is. So Phil, of course, is still upset and distraught, and Hillary comes across him and sees him this way. And she's like, this is a perfect opportunity to get some stuff out of him. And she calls him a genie on Valium. Which I thought was hilarious. And so she and Ashley try to get some stuff out of Uncle Phil, and they do so successfully. And here comes Carlton to ask for some stuff. And of course, Carlton is basically asking,
what do you say? He asked for, like,
can I have access to my trust fund right now?
Fund.
Or yes, like the prodigal son.
But before he asked that, Uncle Phil's like, do you think I'm a good dad?
Oh, he did. He did. And of course, Carlton is like, you're the best. Right. Now, can I have access to my trust fund?
He's like, no. I hate you.
Yes. Hilarious. Okay. Oh, Jeffrey, of course, is just being annoying or whatever. But Phil is still moping around, and Aunt Viv reminds him of who is being selfish in this moment. Like, you have this young kid who finally has the opportunity to spend some time with his father, who he hasn't seen since he was a young child, and you're thinking about yourself, basically. And so, of course, this kind of turns things around for Uncle Phil, and he goes to the pool house where Will lives, basically, and has a heart-to-heart with him. And Uncle Phil basically says, I said what I said, but I was out of line. And Will says, like, I don't want to slight you, right? Like, I'm not doing this to slight you. I just need to spend this time with my father for myself. And then they say they'll miss each other, which I think is really sweet. I don't know if you feel this way, Nene, but when I see a lot of Black men with their sons, I don't see them always using such like loving or nurturing language. I don't know if I've ever heard a Black father tell his son that he'll miss him. Or there are some people, some Black fathers and sons that don't even say they love each other. Like, I've literally heard Black men say, my dad was in my life, but I have never heard him say, I love you.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it and heard it, especially working with kids. You know, I worked at the Boys and Girls Club for 4 years. I saw it, and I would actually make it a point to tell fathers, you know, I worked at the front desk, so I would actually make a point to tell the Black fathers that I really admired them doing that. I had a dad, he had a son and a daughter, but his son had to take insulin every day, I believe, or it was insulin or something else that his dad would bring him daily during the summer for him to take. And whatever it was, he would go into the clinic, do what he had to do, bring it out. And he was about 13 maybe. And I love that his dad actually embraced him every single time. He would hug him and kiss him and say, I love you, you know, and then he would go about his way. I made a point to tell him, like, I absolutely love that because I do not see it a lot. So it's very rare, but it's beautiful when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more impactful to see it on like a national level, as well as seeing it in 1994, right? Like this was basically 30 years ago. So it was really nice to see that level of like affection between like a father-son figure. So it's basically the final scene of the show, and Lou is an hour late. But eventually he shows up and he basically says,
Day late and dollar short, child.
Girl, yes, a few thousand short, because he has to pick up an extra.
Wait. Let's rewind. And make a note about how when Uncle Phil and Will are still talking and like that final scene is Will saying, you know, this is just for the summer, right? And Uncle Phil gives him that look as like, I'm not going to say anything else. But it's not even going to go how you think it's going to go. It's like, I'm just going to be quiet. Not even in a shady type of way, but just like, I feel bad because I know the result, right? Like, I know the outcome of this, and you poor soul. Like, I feel like that's what I took from that. And I'm just like, dang. And I feel like a little bit of Will felt like, this man know what he's talking about, but I'm just going to keep on trucking along because I want my daddy.
Yeah. I don't think I actually picked up on that. I knew that Will was saying this is
stopped me right in my track.
That's interesting. I definitely heard Will say this will only be for the summer. What I got from that part of the interaction was more so Will saying, this man is my dad and I'll be spending the summer with him, but I view you as my real father figure. I saw that as him reassuring Uncle Phil of position in his life, but I didn't read into Uncle Phil's reaction. I don't think I even remembered it.
I did. Yeah, well, no, I saw it because I was like, dang, it just stopped me right in my tracks when I saw it.
Well, Uncle Phil was right. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yes. So, like I said, right. Well, Lou is an hour late. He eventually shows up and he tells them, Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil, he tells them that he has to pick up an extra driver so that he can do a quick turnaround trip that has like a $5,000 payday. And because he has to pick up an extra driver to complete the job in time, there's not going to be any room for Will. So Phil, being the nice, generous guy that he is like, well, if that's the case, I'm going to offer you an alternative. You tell me where your drop-off location is, and I'll get Will there via plane, and y'all can still spend the summer together.
And saying it like, with that little snarky, like, I know you ain't about to even take this offer because I know you're lying.
Right.
I'll do one better for you. I'll fly him to Maine, you know? What's up?
Yeah, and then y'all still spend the summer together. And this Negro, Lou, talking about, well, you know, I got to stay flexible because this job will lead to other big jobs. And basically what he's saying is having Will, a college-age student, tagging along with him is going to make him feel trapped again. The same way he felt trapped with Will and Will's mom. It's not like he's a 5-year-old that you have to watch like a freaking honk. This is an adult man that you have to build a relationship with as an adult man. But Lou doesn't see it that way. Lou is just concerned about himself. Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, this is probably the worst part to me. This coward wants Viv and Phil to break the news to Will. Right. Doesn't even want to tell him himself. How freaking dare you?
Yeah.
And Aunt Viv tells him, if you walk out of here, you don't ever come back.
Don't come back.
Right.
Period.
We don't want you around here. So Phil basically has to yell at Lou to make him sit down. Sit down right now. Sit down. And he calls him out and he holds him accountable. And this is another thing that I feel like is very refreshing to see. To see like a very present Black father call out another father who's not present, who's very absent. Like this level of accountability, I think is refreshing and new.
Yeah.
So Uncle Phil is basically saying you can't step in and out of his life. He's not going to wait around in suspended animation waiting for you to come back. His life goes on when you're not here. And your absence is doing damage. And it's going to be worse if you hip and hop in and out of this man's life every few years. And then Ben Vereen, who is playing Lou, does his iconic performance. And the way he talks is so funny, Nene. I don't know why it's so funny. And he's like, you get off my back. You think I wanted this? Right. It just happened.
It just happened.
Yes. I don't know why. It's almost like sing-songy. It's very weird. I just find it hilarious. It just happened. Oh, Jesus. But Phil says, I'm here for my family. Like, I did it. Like, I don't want to hear your excuses because I'm here every day. Like, I show up for my family. So whatever noise you're talking, like, get rid of it. He's not right. Not accepting the excuses. And so Will, interestingly enough, pops up right before Lou is about to take off. And Lou basically can't weasel his way out of telling Will what's going on. And he quickly tells them, hey, we got to put the trip on hold for a few weeks. And then he has the nerve to say these two words that really bothered me and stood out to me. He said, you understand? That pissed me off. Just those two words saying you understand, because it's not a question, right? Like he's saying, I have something to do that's more important than you are, and you should understand that. And I'm like, that's rude.
Right.
So Will, of course, is upset because Will has basically planned his whole summer around being in a truck with this guy that he doesn't know. So now all of his plans are messed up. And the fact that he was getting closer to his father and feeling those feelings, all of that has gone away. Of course, he's just right back to being not a 14-year-old. He's right back to being a child whose dad just wasn't around for 14 years. But Will is obviously upset, but he says it's okay, even though we know that it's not okay. And what's happening right now is a term that I learned from my therapist called parentification. It's when a child has to act like a parent in a situation. And by denying how upset he is to his father, he's soothing his father when it really should be the other way around. So Lou says he's going to call next week, and Will immediately goes back to calling him Lou instead of dad. So all of those touchy feelings that he was feeling towards his father, they're just gone out of the window. And then here comes the most iconic part of the show.
Yeah.
Lou leaves and Will is basically trying to play it off, right? All of these negative feelings, these feelings of abandonment and neglect, right? And he's like, I went out and bought this present. And it's like a little statue of a father holding a child. And he's basically saying, like, I'm not a 5-year-old little boy anymore, right? Like, I'm too mature for this. I went through all my major milestones without this Negro. I had 14 great birthdays. He ain't send me a card. To hell with him.
Right.
He says, I'm going to excel. And we see Uncle Phil is crying too. It's like this really beautiful moment. And he literally says, like, how come he don't want me, man?
Right. Oof. Heartbreaking.
Absolutely heartbreaking. And then we see Uncle Phil go over and embrace him. And I know this is a show and it's fake, but it just feels real. all the little
I
abandoned
kept seeing
children.
things that it was real for. That's what people were saying. He went off script and was thinking about his own life. I kept reading things, and I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if there's an interview anywhere. I feel
I
like it was the
actually
interview.
heard the opposite.
Really?
So, basically, I heard that Will actually did grow up with his father in his life.
Mm-hmm.
I have also heard that Will's father was abusive and that Will learned that as a child, if he could make his father laugh, that he wouldn't hit Will's mother as much. And so he used humor as a coping mechanism.
I hate abusive people.
Absolutely.
Just go and just die.
So what I'm hearing, or what I've been able to put together, is that Will actually did grow up with his father despite him being abusive, and was actually close to his father, I guess, as he got older. And according to what I read, he actually was thinking about his friends and close, boys or whatever who didn't grow up with their fathers, and like drawing from what he believed their experience was of them not having a dad in their lives. So that was his inspiration.
Okay. I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. So, and I also heard that this scene was ad-libbed as well. So I feel like this is such a beautiful moment, right? Like,
yeah.
Literally, he goes from denial at first of like,
yeah, I have that in my notes. Denial.
Yeah, like, I'm too old for this to impact me the same way it did when I was 6 years old, wondering why my dad's not here, right? Yep. Like, I can't feel abandonment and neglect in this way because I'm older, I'm in college, I'm a man now, right? And I've survived this long without him. And there's a part that I like how he was saying, like, I'm going to go on to be a great man because he can't tell me anything about how to deal with my kids. And so he's like using this as fuel to become a better man.
Right.
And then the show ends with them embracing and Uncle Phil knocking the hat off his head. And that's how you know that wasn't staged.
Yep. He like, get this thing out of the way. I'm about to love you, boy.
Yes. So one of the things that I also learned, because I also watched the reunion for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was that Will was having a hard time preparing to do this scene. He got some advice from James Avery, who plays Uncle Phil. And when Uncle Phil embraced Will Smith, he whispered in his ear, "Now that's acting."
Oh.
Yeah. So James Avery, who played Uncle Phil, was actually like a very trained actor who, like, everybody really looked up to him in the way that he loved the art and how good he was at being an actor. And he is like a big part of the reason why Will Smith is the actor he is today. So, girl, if you have a chance, watch that reunion, like getting to relive those moments and see everybody and see how they're doing. And they all look so beautiful. And they even have a segment with the original Aunt Viv. It's actually very good. And I was in tears when they were talking about, James Avery, who has since passed away. It was...
May he rest in peace.
Yes. So, yeah, that was, like I said, probably the most iconic and replicated scene from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So, Nene, what are your final thoughts? Is the Fresh Prince worth a rewatch? And does it hold up today?
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth a rewatch. And I would say, yeah. I don't really see a whole lot of differences from then and now. And I do feel like that's the best thing about rewatching things is like, now that we are all grown, we see so many other things that we overlooked or like that didn't hit as much because we hadn't lived enough. And I just feel like a lot of things are therapeutic because, like there is this new, I hate to say the word wave of like Black people going to therapy since that wasn't a thing when we were growing up. And I feel like a lot of these episodes and a lot of these scenes are extremely therapeutic for us. When we were younger, we could just look at episodes and we kind of just took from the bits and pieces that we could laugh at. But I do feel like rewatching the seasons help us like connect different things in our lives today.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I feel like at whatever stage you originally watched something, when you go back,
Mm-hmm.
you obviously see things differently. Like you catch things that you didn't catch before,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
you connect those things to your own life. So, of
Yeah.
course, I did not rewatch the entire series, but after
Mm-hmm.
watching those two episodes, I would actually be willing to. I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed watching those
Yeah.
episodes a lot, even though they're over
Mm-hmm.
30 years old,
Right.
and I can get most of the jokes now. And I actually think
Yep.
it holds up and is still really relevant.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, there will be like a lot of 90s references. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really the only part that people who did not watch the show in the 90s won't understand. So
Mm-hmm.
some of those like references from the 90s or whatever, it's like a you had to be there situation. But the main concepts are timeless, right? And the themes are timeless. We're still struggling with police brutality or, you know, people being pulled over while black. And it's like that
Right.
episode is 30 years old, but that topic is still relevant today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I definitely think it's worth a rewatch and it definitely holds up.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. This
So
is awesome, girl.
thanks, girl. So one other thing I wanted to talk with you about is we have to talk about dark skin versus light skin Aunt Viv.
Oh yeah.
This was a major topic in this show, and it has come up in other series as well. For instance, if you all watched My Wife and Kids, the original older daughter was a dark-skinned black girl, and she was
Claire?
replaced with a light-skinned, fine hair girl later on. But there's a lot of issues and things with colorism around these two women who played Aunt Viv. I believe that both of these Aunt Vivs were great in their own right and in their own way.
Yeah, same.
I don't
I just
necessarily.
hate the comparison of black
I
women
agree.
in general. That just irritates me.
I
It irritates my soul.
agree.
I just feel like it just doesn't help our people when we do that. When we talk about colorism, it doesn't help. I just, like you said, they're both great in their own way. I
Yes.
loved all the snappy snazziness and the jazzy way that the dark skinned Aunt Viv dressed, and you know her personality. Just she was just fierce, and I do feel like the Aunt Viv when she was more calm, I feel like she was a little bit more reserved, but she still dressed nice, carried herself very well. You know, she was sweet.
Yes.
I don't think she was necessarily funny or hilarious like dark skinned Aunt Viv, but I do think that they both did a very good job.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't even know if I'll say that colorism had a role to play when it came to them choosing the new Aunt Viv. But
I'm not even sure.
yeah, I'm not even sure.
I hear
It's
so many
possible.
different things. I hear a
Right.
lot of different things. Wasn't there an interview? I kept hearing people say something about the dark skin Aunt Viv was upset or something. There was some fight or something between her and somebody on set. I feel like that was always out there, but I felt like I saw some things of her talking about something when they were getting ready for the reunion or something, but I don't know. I need to do some more research on that.
Yes. Well, the darker skinned Aunt Viv, her name is Janet Hubert, and she was so fortunately, a part of the reunion series or the reunion episode, which you can also find on HBO Max. And for the first time in like 27 years, Janet Hubert and Will Smith sat down to have like a legit conversation about what was going on. And what I could gather was that Janet Hubert was pregnant in real life when her character was pregnant on the show, right? This was her having a child with her husband who she had a difficult marriage with. I don't remember for sure. He might have been abusive to her, but she was having a very difficult time, and I think eventually got divorced from him. But she was having her own personal issues that I guess impacted her mood at work. And Will was a young, happy rapper who, you know, had never acted before, and she's like a world-class trained actress, and she has different expectations of what professionalism mean. While Will Smith is like a young kid who's an entertainer and who wants to foster this like really cool working environment, which means everything's not always professional. you know, and there's just differences, and people felt like she was mean, and there was just a difference in their working styles, and they offered her reduced roles, like a reduced role, and she was like, no. And because she was labeled as difficult from her experiences on the show, her career never really recovered. And basically Aunt Viv was saying, you snot-nosed 20-year-old boy with your new rise to fame ruined my career. Because we had a difference in our working styles. Right. And she didn't come across as, accusatory or anything like that. But it's like Will Smith did not understand the amount of power he was wielding and how he impacted her life, right? Because not only does she not have a job anymore, she's in a difficult marriage where I believe she was the breadwinner. And now she has a new child to raise too. So she held a lot of anger towards him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you could tell that Will was very upset about that, about not realizing how having so much influence at a young age led him to make like a big mistake. So I agree though with what you're saying about people discount the lighter skinned Aunt Viv because she didn't have as strong a personality. And that may have been on purpose, right? Like, they changed her dialogue from the way it was before.
Yeah, right.
So I don't like that people try to discount light-skinned Aunt Viv and who she was and what she accomplished to overcorrect for the fact that a dark-skinned woman was replaced. Like you said, I don't think it serves our community. And to be honest with you, I looked at it and I saw they were basically in the same amount of episodes. I think darker skin Aunt Viv was in 76 episodes and light skin Aunt Viv was in 75. So they basically had equal amount of episodes that they were on the show. So I think there's reasons to love both of them. And I want us to be done with that stupid conversation. And I think we are.
Right.
Yeah. So this show was also produced by Quincy Jones. It was recorded in front of a live studio audience, which is kind of a lost art. A lot of shows are not recorded in front of a studio audience anymore. And one of my favorite things that was not included in any of the episodes that we reviewed today is Jazz getting thrown out of the house. And of course, Carlton dancing. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, those are some of my recurring themes that I really enjoy about the show. So, Nene, do you have any additional thoughts about the show before we close out today?
No, but I do want to say thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I definitely enjoyed it. And I also enjoyed just sitting back, rewatching the shows again. And it has awakened like this fire in me to just go back all the way from season 1, episode 1, and, go through it. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, of course. Thank you for joining me as well. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we definitely have worked through them. And the last thing that I want to add before we close out is that Rotten Tomatoes actually gives Fresh Prince a 91% rating from the regular folks. Rotten Tomatoes usually gets it wrong when it comes to Black media. Yes, I'm calling them out on that. But 91% is actually very good and very close to how I feel about it, too. So, all right, Rotten Tomatoes, y'all get one, Well, thank you all so much for listening to our review of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I want to say a special thanks to my sister and guest for today, Curtricia.
Thank you.
Yes. Next time, I'll be doing a special episode where I review Sister Acts 1 and 2. Peace out. Thanks for listening to Sub Media Reviews. I hope you enjoyed our trip down memory lane just as much as I did. If you have any suggestions for movies or TV shows you'd like me to review next, or if you just want to share your thoughts on today's episode, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest at Sub Media Reviews, and on submediareviews.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps me improve the show and spread the word to new listeners. So until next time, peace out, home slices.